So to continue with this, the blood that enters into the fetus's right atrium is actually fairly oxygen rich, and some of that blood is shunted over to the left atrium via the foramen ovale, foramen and opening, so that that oxygenated blood can go right over into directly over into the left ventricle from the left atrium ventricle, and then get moved into the systemic circulation. So much of that blood is bypassing the lungs because the lungs do not function in oxygen gas exchange in the fetus. That opening is the foramen ovale. Okay? And again, contrasting in you, the blood that enters into your right atrium is oxygen poor. It has to get to the lungs for gas exchange. And then the lungs are sending oxygen-rich blood into your left atrium. Okay? After birth, the foramen ovale closes over, and there's just kind of just a depression there, and that's called the fossa ovalis. Okay, so from the right ventricle in the fetus, right, it will eject blood, and instead of having most of that blood from the pulmonary trunk to go into the lungs, which are not functional, much of that blood is shunted straight into the aorta via the ductus arteriosus. And again, why? Because the lungs are non-functional. The blood entering into the right atrium and right ventricle is fairly oxygen rich, so it gets shunted into the systemic circulation, right? From the pulmonary trunk, ductus arteriosus, into the aorta. After birth, that blood vessel starts to close down and constrict, and then it's just simply a somewhat of a connective tissue structure called the ligamentum arteriosum. Okay? And then the umbilical arteries, we talked about those, carrying oxygen poor blood via the umbilical cord to the placenta to the mother. Here's just another picture showing the fetal circulation. There's the foramen ovale connecting the right and left atria. And then there's the ductus arteriosus connecting the pulmonary trunk to the aorta. And again, those are in the fetus because what enters into the fetus's right atrium is oxygenated blood. So there's these shunts that are bypassing the pulmonary circulation. After birth, the foramen ovale closes over to form just this little depression, the fossa ovalis. And then the ductus arteriosus here constricts down, no longer a blood vessel, and it's now going to become the ligamentum arteriosum. And that's it for this chapter.